أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته and welcome back everyone after our 1 week hiatus. Inshallah everyone had a chance to enjoy their break, spend some time reviewing, maybe reading Quran, trying to see where things are, um, where things lie grammatically in the Quran, inshallah. Um, subhanAllah. My husband actually teaches Tawakkis curriculum at a masjid here in Oakland, Lighthouse Mosque, if anyone's heard of it. And I was actually telling him how exciting it is to do and to start 3B, because the 3B semester, the reading exercises, the text analysis portion, their excerpts, and we start Surah Al-Shu'ara. So we go through a good amount of Surah Al-Shu'ara, and it's just really nice to be able to jump right into the Quranic text. And so you guys have a lot to look forward to after this semester. We're not even halfway through yet, but inshallah, you guys get to the finish line and then we can jump into 3B together, inshallah. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into our Kahoot. Bismillah. All right, first question. What is the meaning of nafkha? Is it blow, wind, time, or fear? Yes, good. It's going to be blow. It will mean to blow. Yeah, wind is a meaning that's close to it, but it's not going to get exactly what we're looking for. All right, question 2. Which preposition is used with raghiba to mean to dislike? Is it raghiba fi or raghiba an? All right. Yeah, it's going to be, raghiba an. So when we use raghiba with the preposition fi, it actually means to prefer something or to like it. And so what we're seeing here is actually the role of prepositions, and how prepositions, when attached to a word, can really affect the meaning of the word, and can actually shape that meaning. So whenever we see raghiba with an, immediately the meaning becomes to dislike. Whereas if we saw it with fi, it would have a different meaning. Yeah, alhamdulillah. All right. Question 3. What is another term for al-maf'ul fihi? Is it al-harfu, al-mansubu, al-dharfu, or al-jarru? Yeah, it's going to mean al-dharf, right? We say dharf makan and dharf zaman. It wouldn't be al-mansub because that's not another name. It's the case, the state of a word that is a maf'ul fihi, the word is mansub. So like, for example, the word yawm, al-yawma, if someone were to say al-yawma, right? This would be mansub, but it's a dharf zaman, right? And jar is also case. So that wouldn't have much to do with the maf'ul fihi. All right. Question 4. Which of these is not an adverb of time? Sanata, jahra, tahta, or bukra? Yeah, the word that is not an adverb of time is going to be tahta. And the reason why is because tahta is an adverb of place, right? It's a dharf makan, not zaman. Awesome. All right, excellent. Question number 5. Which of the following is an adverb of place? Ma'a or usbu'a? Right. So here, ma'a is going to be our adverb of place, right? Usbu'a means week, right? So when we say usbu'a, it means week. So automatically that will mean that will be time, right? It's the week of such and such, or 1 week, 2 weeks, whatever it might be. Week indicates time. And ma'a, on the other hand, we actually mentioned this, right? We had a conversation on how ma'a is actually not a harf. It's not a harf jar. It's actually a dharf. Even though it's only 2 letters, it indicates with, and with is indicating placement, right? Okay, awesome. Question 6, true or false? In the word ba'da, if the word ba'da was preceded by a min, so for example, min ba'd, the word ba'd would be majroor. Is this true or false? So this would be true. One of the reasons for this is to show, look, as soon as we add min, even though ba'da is still an adverb of time, when we add min, right, anything that comes after min, because min is a harf jar, we're gonna say min ba'di, right? As soon as we say min ba'di, this is now in the jar case. Even though it's an adverb of time, it can come with min and it can end up in a different case. But that's if something comes prior to it that would cause it to be in a different case. Same thing with qabl, min qabli. Okay. Question number 7. What is the best translation of hina mawludihi? Yes, it's going to be, hina means when, literally. So when, it's like when he was birthed, right? When his birth took place, essentially. So it's literally at the time of his birth. So even in English, when we say, I was feeling sick when I woke up, right? We're saying at the time of my waking up, I was feeling sick, right? So it's somewhat similar in English. Okay, question 8. What case is the word as-sama in the phrase bayna as-sama'i? Yeah, it's going to be majroor, right? And why is that? Well, because whenever we have a dharf, right? Anytime we have a dharf, it's treated as an idafa, right? So bayna as-sama'i. Same thing with all the other dhuruf is that we treat them like idafa. So that's what the main purpose or main grammatical the main grammatical not role, but the main grammatical like consequence is that it ends up being an idafa. All right, question 9. The word صيحة is what is it? A masdar marra, a masdar mimi, masdar al-hay'a, or a regular masdar? Yeah, so we're gonna see that it is a masdar marra. Why? Because the masdar marra, if we recall, is on the pattern fa'latun. On the pattern fa'la. So anything that's on the pattern fa'latun is generally going to be a masdar marra. Right? It'll be a masdar marra. All right. And question 10, the word Ayesha is which one? Masdar marra, masdar mimi, masdar al-hay'a, or a regular masdar? Right, so this is going to be a masdar hay'a, right? Because it means the way of living. Why? It's on the pattern. فعلة. Right, فعلة. So we talked about how the masdar marra is fa'la and the masdar al-hay'a is fa'la. Okay, so let's see how we did. Third place, we have Abdul Ahad. Awesome. Alhamdulillah. Second place, we have Muhaymina. Excellent. And in first place, we have Aziza. Very cool. Nice. And we have Asma and Ayesha Morgan as our runners-up. Awesome. Congrats. Congrats. Okay. All right. So we're going to go ahead and jump into our lesson. Alhamdulillah, today we are starting lesson number 5, Ad-Darsu al-Khamis. That means that next week we will be at our halfway mark, which is very exciting. So what I'd like to do is, first things first, is I'd like if someone could volunteer, ideally. So if you were on the list, the latest list that I sent out, feel free. I will take any volunteers from that list before we start repeating volunteers, inshallah. Okay. Yes, awesome. Asma, great. Asma, so we're gonna pause with you for a second and then we'll have you jump in. We're just gonna go over what we've covered so far, especially since we've had a break over the last week. So we'll jump in with you in just a little bit. But thank you very much for volunteering. Okay. So today we're actually covering Al-Maf'ūl Ma'ahu, and it is the object of accompaniment. And so we're gonna see what that is. Asma will introduce us to that, inshallah. What I just wanted to do prior to that is to cover the different types of objects that we've already seen. So as we mentioned before, objects are maf'ulat in particular, are things that have a relationship to a fa'il, right? Literally, as we've said before, the maf'ul is on the pattern ism maf'ul. And it literally is that which receives something from the fa'il, right? We know that the ism maf'ul is something that receives an action in some capacity from the fa'il. And we've seen that there are 5 ways that an action could be received. There are 5 ways, 5 different types of objects that interact with the verb. We've seen the direct object, which we saw a long, long time ago in level 1, which feels like ages ago now, alhamdulillah. We have so much of that still with us. In lesson 3 of this semester, we covered the maf'ul li ajlihi, which was it was getting at the question of why something was taking place. It was expressing some type of a motive. Usually there were an internal motive that was coming, that was expressing the reason behind the action. And then in lesson 4, 2 weeks ago, we covered what we called al-maf'ul fihi, which is the noun of, it's not a noun, it's an object of time and place. They technically are nouns, I guess, yeah. Well, no, these are adverbs, actually. A lot of these are adverbs, excuse me. So asking when and where is actually what an adverb does. So when we had the maf'ul fihi, we said the other name for the maf'ul fihi is the dharf. And how does that operate? Well, we have dharf zaman, which indicates time, like yawm, sana, usbu'. Then we had the dharf makan, which indicates place. Like we have what? Tahta, fawqa, qabla is before, that's time. Yeah, so we also have those that indicate place. So that's what we covered last week. All of these are in the nasab case, right? So that's another thing that keeps them all together, is all of the maf'ulat take the nasab case, which means the default sign is the fatha. Today we are covering what we call al-maf'ul ma'ahu, which is looking at with whom. And so this is actually rare. It doesn't happen very often, and it happens on a few occasions in the Quran, which is why we're actually covering it in Fawaqih's curriculum. We're going to talk a little bit more about what this really means and how we can kind of conceptualize it. But for now, let's have Asma go ahead and jump into an introduction of this for us, or a brief elevator pitch, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
When we see the wow has a lot of when we see a wow in the text, it could have a lot of uses. We've covered ataf, which is conjunction.
Right.
And when wow is used as a conjunction, it could have a kasra or a fatha or a dama or a jazm, and it's fairly easy to identify, I think. The other wow that we see very commonly is the qasam. The identifier for that is the word following the wow will mostly be in the kasra. So wallaili are the examples of that oath.
Right.
What we are learning today is the object of accompaniment, which is Maf'ūl Ma'ahu. And here we will always find that the um, word would be in nasab case. So the characteristics um, maf- of Maf'ūl Ma'ahu are that it will be in a nasab case, and it really tells you about with whom the action is done. So it's the object of accompaniment.
Right.
And then some of the examples they have is Sallamtu alayhi wa abahu. So I greeted him along with his father. Um, and that's mainly it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I really appreciate how you went into the different meanings of wow, because that's actually very essential to being able to understand when we have a maf'ul ma'ahu, where the wow is the ma'ahu, right? As opposed to the wow being ataf or being qasam, or what we're going to see later is being what we'll call hal, which is a state. So what we'll do again, we'll go over some of those again with a little bit of detail, because highlighting those is important, because when we can compare the wow into a schema of different options, we can then use a process of elimination to understand, is this wow ma'ahu or is it not? And so we can test not only the grammar and the i'rab, or the ending of the letters of words that come after the wow, or we can look at the meaning and say, hey, how is this fitting in terms of the meaning? And we'll talk a little bit more about the meaning after we do this breakdown. So thank you so much, Asma. It's a great way to start. So we're going to go ahead and jump back there, and we're going to go ahead and say, okay, we have a wow. And a wow, it's one letter, but what we're going to see is some letters have many meanings, and they have so much to tell us and so much to share. And they like to confuse us at times. So the best thing we can do is do our best to understand those small letters that have so many meanings, so that we can get to know them in a level that allows us to differentiate when one meaning is used as opposed to another. So like we said, the first meaning of wow is what we call the default, right? We have the default state of wow, which is what we call al-waw al-ataf, right? And we covered this, I believe, in level 2, right? And as Asma mentioned, right, the waw al-ataf usually means and, right? It's a conjunction. And it follows the hukum, right? It follows what came before it, either in that it can take a fatha. So if we have, in that it can take a fatha, a dhamma, a kasra, or a sukoon, right? It will follow. It's a follower. It's what we call min at-tawabi'. It's actually a special type of category, of grammatical category. It's what we call a follower. Let's see. It's what we call a follower. We'll see a couple other things in level 4 that are similar to this. So the atif is the default that we've seen. We call it and, right? It translates usually as and. It's a conjunction. We put that here too. It's a conjunction. And so this is the wow that we're the most familiar with. There are actually some others, like there's a wow of ibtida. There's a wow of starting a new sentence. So sometimes a wow at the beginning of a sentence is not an atif. It's a wow of ibtida. You can use a wow to start a new sentence, actually. So there's things like that, which we haven't totally covered, but we've come across technically. Okay, the next meaning of the wow is what we call, it's the wow of qasam, wow al-qasam. And this is, as Asma also mentioned, it is when it's the wow of an oath, right? And so usually this is actually going to be in the jad case. So you're usually gonna see a kasra for it. So we can even put jad here, right? So this one's a follower. The wow of ataf is a follower, but the wow of qasam is in the jad case most of the time. And then what do we call this? It's the oath, right? So whenever we see it, it's pretty clear. Wallahi, right? You have that kasra dragging it down. And maybe as a mnemonic, you say, well, the oath pulls you down. It forces you to do it, right? That's what happens when we make an oath is we're obliged to fulfill the oath, right? So it almost like drags you down into it. You could think of that because the jar means dragging, right? So that's a way to think about the case ending of the qasam. Might be a fun mnemonic. Okay, so that's the wow. All right. What we're going to cover today is the ma'iyya, right? Which is going to be, we'll look at, before we do that, we're going to see what we have. In a few weeks, we're going to cover what we call waw al-hal. And this is also in the nasab case. So it's also going to take a fatha, and it's going to indicate the state of something. And it's usually actually often comes with a sentence. But we won't go into too much detail about this because we'll have a whole lesson on this and how it works. But we have a wow that can be what we call waw al-hal. All right, and so today's wow is what we call the wow of ma'iyya. The wow of ma'iyya, and it's the wow of accompaniment, right? It's accompanying. It usually gets translated as with. And what's the case? It also takes a fatha. It's in the nasab case. So we know that this wow, or this waw al-hal is also nasab. Put a nasab there. And this wow as well is also going to be nasab. Okay. The waw of ma'iyya, that means with, is what we call, if we were to label it, it would be accompaniment. Okay. So the main wows that we want to pay attention to, the ones that might be the most tricky, fall under the ma'iyya and the ataf. And part of this is also because of the meaning. So one of the things I actually would like to ask is, just in our general understanding, and you're welcome to like unmute your mic for this. What is the difference between saying and saying with? Right? We have conjunction versus accompaniment, but what does that really mean? What does that mean? Let's think about that a little bit more.
Like in ataf, there will be like they both go to like Zaidun wa Hamidun.
Right.
Yeah. And accompaniment, like they say, Qamat Zahrau wa Zaidan.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so if I were to say Zaid and Khalid came.
Yes, they both came at the same time.
Is that what one of the meanings I can get if I use and? If I say Zaid and Khalid came?
No. That
can
will
I
be
have one of those
they
meanings?
came. No. They said they just came. No, we didn't say they came. Zaidun and Hamidin. We only say Zaid and Hamid.
Okay. So
but we have the accompaniment, we say like Qamat Zuhra was Zaidun. So like Zuhra stood with Zaid.
Okay. So let's just think about the English for now. Let's ignore the Arabic.
Yeah.
When I say Zaid and Khalid came, would this mean that they came together? That they came at the same time? That they just came, like, I'm having a barbecue at my house and Zaid isn't invited and Khalid isn't invited, and they both came. They didn't come together and they didn't come at the same time.
Yeah.
What are the possibilities when I use and? What are the possibilities?
It can mean they either came together. It can mean they came separately at different times. It's got several meanings to it.
Right. It has several meanings to it. And it's mostly because of my use of and, right? And actually just says both did this action, right? Zaid and Khalid, they came. They participated in this action. There's no specific details as to whether they came together, whether they came at the same time, whether they came separately, right? So it's a little ambiguous. It's more general. The only information we're really getting is that both completed the action, right? And it could mean that they came together. It could mean that they came at the same time. It could mean that they didn't come separately. All of those are possibilities, right? And gives us room for that. Now, if I change my sentence, maybe this first sentence should have been blue, but I'll make the other one blue, I guess. If I change my sentence and I then say, Zaid came with Khalid.
Yeah, that will be.
Right? What happens now?
Now
It's
we know where.
specified to time and action.
Right. It's specifying that Zayd was with Khalid and they both came together, right? That's what we're seeing that's coming within the language. And so the reason why I want to draw this out is because sometimes there's an understanding of like, why do we have this wow of ma'iyya? Couldn't and cover it? And it could technically cover it, but and is also, or the conjunction is also more ambiguous. It doesn't specify really what's happening, especially if what I'm looking for is accompaniment. So when I use the ma'iyya, I'm getting more clarity as to how that action is taking place, right? How is the coming happening? Well, Zayd is coming as being accompanied with Zayd, right? And they're happening together. Okay, so that's really what we want to kind of highlight, even in the English. So one of the things I had sent you all right before class was the definitions in English of both with and. So even in English, right, with has the meaning of in the company of, accompanying, next to, alongside, which is why we can also say something like, in Arabic, there's a sentence, that is a standard example, which is, I shouldn't use yellow, let's see. Mashaytu. It's usually Mashaytu wal jibala, but I like wan nila. Anyone know what the nil is? Anyone want to guess what a nil is? Oh, no guesses?
Nile.
Yeah, thank you. I used to live in Egypt, which is why I like this. I prefer this example. So when I say mashaytu wan nila, I'm literally saying I walked alongside the Nile. So it's like I walked alongside the riverbank. Right now, the riverbank is all sidewalk and it's constructed, but I walked alongside the river. And so that's what's saying is I was accompanied in my walking. I was with the Nile walking. But here it's saying I was walking like beside the river, alongside the river, right? And so you can't really get that meaning with and. And so you can use it for in terms of doing something with people, but you can also use it in terms of place, right? You can also say I did something alongside this. So there's a classic example that's mashaytu wal jabala, like I walked alongside the mountain, right? And so that's where it's coming from. It's saying alongside, with, in the company of the mountain. So that's really what we're getting at. Do we have any questions on this, just in terms of the difference between and with, or the waw al-ataf and the waw al-ma'iyya? Okay, awesome.
The things you sent Ayesha in the morning, I think.
Yeah, it's in the WhatsApp group.
Yeah, but I think it is 9:58, so I didn't look.
That's okay.
So this will be, we can hear from this is audio also, or what is this?
No, it's just they're just the dictionary entries of those words in English, just so we can understand what is the difference between using and using with.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Any other questions on this? All right. Alhamdulillah. Okay. So with that, we will then jump into what's happening with the waw al-ma'iyya. Oh, sorry, the waw al-ma'ahu, right? It is also, we could say waw al-ma'iyya, Maf'ūl Ma'ahu. Okay, the first thing is that the noun that comes after our waw is going to be mansub, right? It's from the maf'ulat, so the default is that its case is nasab. Okay, what is the second characteristic? That it specifies with whom the action is done, right? It's telling us, who did this take place? Who did this, what did this happen with, or with whom did this happen, right? And then we have it coming with the waw al-ma'iyya. So these are like conditions or characteristics. There are some additional things you want to also keep in mind, which is helpful when you're thinking about the waw. One is that the waw al-ma'iyya, or the Maf'ūl Ma'ahu, it's not an essential part of a sentence. So that means that it's not a mubtada and khabar, which are pillars of a sentence, nor is it a verb, right? It's not going to be an essential aspect to our sentence. So that's the first thing you want to keep in mind. So it's actually what we call in Arabic, we call it a fadla. Okay, it's what we call a fadla. What does that mean? That means like it's a supplementary, it's additional, versus in umda, right? In umda in Arabic and in Arabic grammar, it's like it's a pillar. And umda is a pillar. So like mubtada and khabar are umda of our sentence. Why? Because I can't have a sentence without a mubtada and without a khabar or without a fi'il if I have a verbal sentence. So a lot of what we're learning with the maf'ulat are that they're fadla. They're things that come in addition to the main components of our sentence. So that's one thing we want to mention is that I could just say in my example, sallamtu alayhi, and I don't need to have wa abahu. I don't need that, right? Technically, I don't need that. I can take away was zaydan, technically. The sentence still works if I take those away. Second thing we want to note is that generally, right, the waw, the maf'ūl ma'ahu has a full sentence prior to it, right? It has to have a full sentence prior to it, and generally it's a verbal sentence, right? So qamat zahra'u sallamtu alayhi, those are both full sentences that are coming prior to the maf'ūl ma'ahu. Even in our example, Quranic example, ya jibalu awwibi ma'ahu, this is also a full sentence, right? Yes, Asma.
You gave the example of sallamtu alayhi. So that is I greeted him.
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time breaking it down. So sallamtu is I greeted, and then it says alayhim. So is there something going on there?
Yeah, so here the preposition ala naturally comes with sallama to have the meaning of what was normally would be a maf'ul bihi. So when I say sallamtu alayhi, I'm really saying I greeted him, but I need ala to give me that meaning. Does that make sense? So it's like when we had raghiba fi and raghiba an, the meaning is like conjoined with the preposition.
Okay, so it's just because of the sallamtu doesn't come without Allah. Otherwise,
if I want to, I could just say sallama, which is to greet. But if I want to greet someone, I would use ala with it generally. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah,
I was getting confused by the Allah.
No, that's fine. There are many verbs you'll find. So this is what's a little well, we've talked about this actually in level 2. We talked about how even in the dictionary, if you look up certain verbs, you go into the dictionary and you see that certain prepositions will come with a verb to indicate a specific meaning, right? And we saw this example even with raghiba in our quiz today, right? In the Kahoot. When we have raghiba fi, right? It means to like or prefer. I need the fi to indicate the meaning of to prefer. And as soon as I make it raghiba an, as soon as I do this, it means to dislike. And so the preposition is actually playing an important role to the meaning of the verb. And so something similar is happening here with alayhi, sallamtu ala. It's like the meaning of sallama is not complete in a sense without having that ala there. Or I can't use it in this particular way.
So are there a lot of words like that we need to kind of keep in mind, or is it just by practice you'll
kind of get them by practice? There aren't so many, and you'll kind of notice them out of habit. But fawakih also, if you notice, they give you a number of them. So like when we had lesson 4, right? If you go to your lesson 4 vocabulary, you get faragha min, right? To be empty of doing something. The min is a part of it. Raghiba fi versus raghiba an. Like, well, actually, we give you a good number of them. I think even in lesson 3, you have wada'a ala versus wada'a an, right? Same thing. When you add ala, it means to put something down. But when you put an, it means to lift that thing up, right? And so you have examples. We're kind of giving you a number of those in the vocabulary. And so if you memorize, you want to make sure that when you memorize those words, that you memorize them with the prepositions, because the prepositions play a pivotal role in the meaning of that verb. Yeah, that's a good question. So we have salamtu alas. Yeah, so if we just go into this example, yes.
So I'm not sure, it might help. So example, it could be translated as I greeted upon him, or I gave salams upon him and his father. I'm not sure that helps or not.
Yeah, I mean that does help, but in English that sounds a little awkward to say I greeted upon him, right? That doesn't work completely in English. We could, that is technically the meaning, right? I caused peace upon him, literally, right? or yeah, I conveyed peace upon him. That might make more sense. Yeah, that might make more sense. I caused peace in the sense of I conveyed peace, I shared it with him or upon him. Yeah, that works. But here it's also a question of translation, right? That's what we're looking at too. It's a question of translation, but also making sure things are also idiomatic in English.
Like about the alif will be the mansub, which shows that it is mansub.
Exactly.
Because it is the
It's one of the 5 nouns, right?
Five nouns, yeah.
Exactly. Good. Excellent. Good. So when we go into the wow now, we have wa abahu. And here, what is happening with aba? What's the case for it, Aziza?
It is a mansub will be.
Right.
Alif
Right. And why?
Mansub.
Well, why would it be mansub? It is a
With
maf'ūl.
a special
Yeah,
noun.
ma'ahi. This will be ma'ahu.
Right.
Maf'ūl
Exactly.
ma-
Exactly. It's maf'ūl ma'ahu.
The actual word was wa abihi, no?
If it was atif, it would be wa abihi,
Yeah.
right? If this was
Then it
atif,
changed. Yeah.
we would make this wa abihi.
Yeah.
That's if it was atif. But here we know it's not atif because of the alif.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. So if we jump into our other examples, right? We have قامت زهراء وزيدان. Zahra stood with Zayd. Right? So it could be here again we have it in the nasib case, right? So we see the fatha, and this is the biggest clue, right? Is that you have the fatha there, like, oh, something's different. This looks more like it's ma'ahu. That Zahra did her standing, right? She participated in the action of standing. She stood with Zayd, right? Now, if it was to be and Zayd, would be wa Zaydun. Zahra'u wa Zaydun qama, right? Qama Zahra'u wa Zaydun. But we don't have that. We have it in the nasib case. Okay. And the Quranic example that we have here is what we have, Ya jibalu awwibi ma'ahu wat-tayra. Okay, so it's a similar concept. We want to look at a few things. One, the Ya jibalu we're going to ignore for now, just because this is what we call munada, and we will cover that, I believe, in lesson 11 of the semester. It's all the way at the end. So we're going to ignore why is it jibalu and there's no al and so on and so forth. What we do want to note is that jibalu is what kind of a plural is this? Let's see.
Broken plural it is.
It's a broken plural. Good. So how do we treat it?
Like a feminine, singular feminine.
Good. It's like singular. We treat it like a singular feminine, not just because it's a broken plural, but it's also a non-human plural.
Yeah, non-human also.
Awesome.
Broken and non-human.
Great. So we treat it like a singular feminine. Good. So can we have someone else? What's happening with al-wibi? What do we notice? So we've covered form 2. What do we see with al-wibi? What does this look like? Al-wibi.
Fi'l amr.
Good.
It's for female singular.
Good. What form is this?
2.
Awesome. It's form 2. Good. And you said it's for the feminine. For the command for the fi'l amr, what is the pronoun for this then if it's feminine?
Anti.
Excellent. Right. So it's speaking to al-jibal, right? Allah speaking to the mountains. Anti ya jibalu, because we treat it like the singular feminine. Al-wibi, right? Which means to like repeat. Ma'ahu, right? So here ma'a is already here. We literally have ma'a. In this context, the ma'a is referring to Dawood. And then we have awwibi ma'ahu wat-tayra. Right? So what's happening with wat-tayra? Let's see if we can get someone else. Maybe let's see. Omar, would you like to tell us what's happening with wat-tayra?
I'm sorry, can I skip for now?
Yeah, no problem. Let's see. Ayesha Morgan, would you like to give it a shot?
It's the accompaniment.
Good.
So we would call it yeah. Right?
Yeah, the waw is ma'iyya. So the waw is ma'iyya, right? This is a waw al-ma'iyya. But what's the tayra? What would we call that? The tayra is actually, it is our maf'ūl ma'ahu.
It's nasib.
Right.
Because
Nasib.
it's following the accompaniment.
Right. And we call it the maf'ūl ma'ahu. Right. So the waw is what we call waw al-ma'iyya. And the word after the waw is what we call the maf'ūl ma'ahu.
Oh.
Right. Because waw literally means ma'a here. You can replace the waw with the meaning of ma'a. So it's like saying أوبي معه يعني داود والطيرة like يعني مع الطيرة. So Allah is commanding the mountains to repeat praises with Dawood and with the birds, right? And so it's just creating this context of do this with so and with this as well, right? With the birds as well. Okay, everyone understand the parts? So in all of these, we should be able to distinguish where the waw of ma'iyya is and where the maf'ūl ma'ahu is. So for example, in the when we have sallamtu alayhi wa abahu, let's see, Ahmed, could you tell us where's the waw of ma'iyya and where is the abahu? Oh, sorry, what is the abahu? Excuse me. See if Ahmed's available. Okay, let's take someone else. Asma, could you tell us what's happening? What are my parts in wa abahu?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so in this phrase, salamtu alayhi wa abahu, what's happening with wa abahu? What are my parts?
So abahu is his father, so that's mudaf alayhi.
Good, isn't idafa good? What is it grammatically? Why does it take that fatha?
Yeah, so it is our Maf'ūl Ma'ahu,
Yeah,
and that's
awesome.
why there's a fatha.
Good, and what's preceding it?
Because of the waw. The waw is preceding it.
Good,
Yeah.
what do we call that waw? Waw al? What kind of waw is it?
Waw al ma'iyata?
Yeah, waw al ma'iyya, excellent. We have it right above here, right? Awesome, thank you. All right, let's go ahead and take let's see.
Question.
Yes.
Sorry. So I guess I had a small epiphany. So pretty much this is more easier instead of saying, example, Ya jibalu awwabi ma'ahu wa ma'a tayr. This is making it more eloquent to say what tayr, for example, instead of saying, or salamtu alayhi wa ma'a abahu, example. So
yeah, that's a good reason, because that's a good I like that, because you have to ask, like in this example, why don't we just repeat ma, or why don't we make it ataf? I mean, it just that's not what's happening here, right? And so here ataf wouldn't make sense to say, praise with him and the birds. I mean, it could, but what tayyara, I don't know if the verse ends on this, because if it actually, let me double check that.
It does not. It goes وَأَلَنَّا لَهُ الْحَدِيدِ.
Yeah. So you could technically, I think, pause there, but yeah, it doesn't. The verse doesn't end here. So there's this question of like, is it about eloquence and how it's supposed to sound? That's a good question, and it could be. That could be a reason. Yeah, awesome. Okay, so let's just last part, right? Let's go ahead and take Aziza. What's happening with wazaydan? Qamat zahra'u wazaydan. What are my parts to wazaydan? What's happening here?
The waw is the waw of Maya.
Okay, awesome.
And Zaidan will be the Maf'ūl Ma'ahu.
Right, awesome. Yeah, so this might sound kind of redundant, but the reason why we're going through it is we just want to make sure we understand that in this construct there are parts, right? We have a Maf'ūl Ma'ahu, and we have a waw al ma'iyya, and we want to make sure we can point out what those parts are.
I have a question that Ma'ahu wa tayra, somebody say if it is, we can make it ataf, then they need to be, the ending need to be same na for ataf before and after.
Yeah, it would be wa tayri technically, right? But it doesn't have that. And so that's why when we go back to the previous section where we had given that breakdown, which you have on page 99 of the different types of waw, that's what's really helpful, is that you can use a process of elimination using the i'rab, which is the endings, right? You can use the endings, but we can also look at the meanings, right? Okay. Any questions on this? Any other questions? Something else that differentiates this from the waw of ataf is that before the waw of ma'iyya, we have a full sentence. We don't have a single word that comes. All right. Okay, awesome. It's pretty straightforward. I think when I first learned the mansubat, I learned them all at once, and so it got very confusing very quickly. And so that's one of the things I really, really think is great about Fawakih's curriculum is they break them down in parts. And so you get to see each one in detail over time. And so that allows you to really process what one is as opposed to another. And so you can see the differences between them and you can understand the concepts more clearly. So alhamdulillah for Fawakih's curriculum, I think it's got one of the best approaches to dealing with the mansubat. Because generally if you open like a book, even like English books on Arabic grammar, it's literally just like, oh, and here are the mansubat, and it just gives you a list. And it doesn't go into the detail and with the examples that we see here. So alhamdulillah for that. Alhamdulillah. All right. So now what we would like to do is we're just going to go ahead and practice for a little bit. We may practice like 10-15 minutes and then we'll go on our break, inshallah. But what we want to do here is we just want to say, okay, let's go ahead and identify where is my maf'ūl ma'ahu, and can we identify it? So let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and just go through our list. We have, I think, 7 of us here today, so we can go ahead and go through our list, inshallah. So let's go ahead and start with Abdul Ahad. Number 1, what are you noticing here? Can we identify a maf'ūl ma'ahu?
Yes. وسخرنا مع داود وسخرنا مع داود الجبال يسبحن والطير. Yes. We have a waw ma'iyya. We have a maf'ūl maf'ūl ma'iyya.
Okay, is it maf'ūl ma'iyya or maf'ūl ma'ahu?
I mean maf'ūl ma'ahu.
Yeah, awesome. Okay. Awesome.
Do you want me to translate anything or just that's fine?
No, you don't have to. It's okay.
Okay.
We have a translation, I think. Yeah, so here it's just saying to glorify God, right? Yusabbihna, and this is also, it's going to be a tawkid, wat-tayra, with the birds, right? So this is actually going back to a similar example that we saw before, right? Which is that sakharna ma'a Dawood, that we subjugated with Dawood the mountains. Yusabbihna wat-tayra, right? Yeah.
So one question. So you said the sentence before, like it could like that what tayra is fadla. So can you break down for us the first part of the sentence to see what you said? I'm trying to see how it.
Yeah.
What.
So the first part, so these are actually 2 verbal sentences, right? This second part is describing. The second part is separate. We have وَسَخَّرْنَا, right, is the past tense verb. مَعَ دَاوُودَ, that's the idafa. الْجِبَالَ, we subjugated the mountains with Dawood. يُسَبِّحْنَا وَالطَّيْرَ, that to glorify, يُسَبِّحْنَا وَالطَّيْرَ, right, to glorify with the bird. So here we have our past tense verb. We have our idafa. This is jibala here is actually the maf'ūl bihi for sakhara. Yeah, it's a maf'ūl bihi for sakhara. And then we have yusabbihna wa tayra. So here the yusabbihna is saying to glorify. And so the glorification is coming from Dawood and the mountains. I think they're actually both coming here together. And that's what the ya is being conjugated for. Because earlier we saw jibal being used as the singular feminine. But here it would mean that Dawood and the mountains are praising, right? They're singing, they're glorifying Allah with the birds, right?
Okay. So we could stop there. So technically we could kind of stop there in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Inshallah khair.
All right. Let's go ahead. We have Ahmed. Would you like to take number 2? Is Ahmed here? Okay, let's go ahead and take Ayesha Morgan.
So it seems to me it's sort of easy to look at the first to look at the haraka after the wow, and so with well mukadhibin, because it's a nasib ending, then I'm going to say it's accompaniment, because it
yeah,
because that's just what it seems to be.
yeah. So here it's going to be accompaniment. Now so it's wal mukadhibin, it's with the deniers, right? So we have dharni, right? We have dharni. With what kind of verb is dharni?
It's amr.
Yeah, it's an amr. Right, good. Good. And so the ni is also going to be our maf'ūl bihi. So it's saying literally, leave me with the deniers, right? And so here it's using the meaning of with, but what's difficult, I guess, sometimes to acknowledge is that the mukadhibin, right? It's not like it's not a maf'ul bihi, it's not following something else, it's not ataf, so it doesn't go back to the doer of dharni, right? Nor does it go back to the maf'ul bihi. It's just saying with, it just means accompaniment on its own, right? And so that's what sometimes can feel a little strange, is that, oh, it feels like it's a with something out of nowhere, but that's okay, that's what it is, it allows that, right?
It's like what you were saying before, that the sentence can exist without it,
right?
But what it's doing is adding information.
Yeah, exactly. So we could just say dharni, but here you could say leave me, but it's saying leave me with this group of people. Okay. And they're literally mukadhibin, are literally going to be deniers. Right. Yeah. All right. Let's go to the next one. We're just not going to break down all these sentences for now, because we want to just work through our activity, see how far we get, inshallah. So let's see. We have Asma. Could you look at number 3?
Yeah, so in here we have we see an ataf actually. Inna Allaha wa malaikatuhu yusalluna ala nabiyyi, and because of inna we see Allah, it's ism inna.
Yeah.
So it's Allah and his angels.
Yeah.
Yusalluna ala nabiyya, send greetings upon the prophet.
Yeah. And so here's a question of like, this is translated as an and. So let's see. Oh, we actually skipped this. Interesting. Yeah, it's actually interesting because some opinions will actually say that some of the opinions will actually say that like a word that is ma'ahu could be atif. So just as we said, like we had this conversation yesterday around like ila versus ala, particles, sometimes there could be debate about whether a particle is an atif or a ma'ahu. There could be a debate around it, right? So we talked about how and can mean what's in ma'a, but it's more general, right? And so because even the meanings can overlap, there could be debates around whether this is a ma'ahu or not. So for example, even in dharni wal mukadhibin, I'm looking at Quran grammatical breakdowns, I would say, oh, it's an atifa, but it might not, it can also be with, right? It's accompaniment. The thing is, like, if it is atifa, what is it going back to? And what would it be following? What would it be following? Yeah, I mean, you could literally say dharni wal mukadhibin, and if it's because it's nasib, it would follow the ya. That would be I think that'd be the only option we have. So it can get a little tricky is what I'm saying. But we're gonna go ahead and break it down. So even with inna Allah wa malaikatahu, right? We have wal malaikatahu. This is technically, it would be atif in this case, right? It would be atif, but we could say Allah with his angels, right? Sends prayers upon the prophet. So there's a question of, okay, this is generally atif, but Allah could do this with them, that would also be a possibility. So the challenge I think you have is when the atif can actually seem to fit something that's in the nasib case. That's the biggest time where you'd have the disparity between atif versus ma'iyya, right? Is in situations like number 2 and maybe number 3 as well. But here, I don't think Fawakih actually says that this is going to be atif.
So is it true that if there was no inna there, then there would be no confusion because it would be Allahu wa malaikatu?
If it was wa malaikatahu, yeah, you're right. It would be, yeah.
But for Maf'ūl Ma'ahu, does it need a verb before it can say that it is Maf'ūl Ma'ahu, or we can say with the isim also?
Yeah, because the thing is that yeah, that's
like this, inna Allah wa malaikatahu,
yeah, no,
it is the same.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. The thing is that inna Allah yusalluna ma'a malaikatahu, right? Wa malaikatahu. So yeah, that's what you're saying, because both of them are being conjugated for this, right? That's why it's plural. That would be a good reason. Yeah, that's actually great reasoning, Aziza.
So are you saying that this is because this is a nominal sentence that it cannot be a Maf'ūl Ma'ahu?
That's a part of it. I think that's what Aziza is saying. The other thing that makes that more clear is that the verb being conjugated, it's a part of the umda. It's a part of the pillar. When we say yusalluna, this is hum yusalluna, which is including the Allah with the angels together. That's why it's a plural conjugation.
Right? I see.
And so that would be another reason, is that malaika here is the wow here is going back to the malaika along with Allah. And so in that sense, that would be another reason, is that the verb is already being conjugated for it, which is in our previous examples. If you guys go back to page 99, let's see, here, قامت زهراء وزيدان, right? If this was زهراء, oh, okay, زهراء is the fa'il, and this is being conjugated for our fa'il, right? Which is qamat. That's why it's feminine, right?
Because my understanding was that we need a verb before the wow to say that it is Maf'ūl Ma'ahu.
Yeah, no, that works. Yeah, that works. That works. Okay. I think we have a few people that are unmuted. Okay. Let's see. Make sure we can mute ourselves, unless we aren't able. Okay. So. Yes.
So a khabar would be yusalluna ala nabi, khabar inna.
Yeah, that would be the khabar inna. Yeah, it's a jumla fi'liya. في محل رفع خبر إن. Yeah. Yeah, even the Quranic commentaries say this is just atif. So yeah. Okay, awesome. Yeah, but that's a good point, Aziza. Yeah, we could say that the reason why this is not the case is because the verbal sense has to come before, which works. That reasoning works. Okay. Let's go to number 4. Let's see. We had Ayesha. We had Asma. Let's go ahead and go Aziza. I think you have the next one. وَالَّذِينَ تَبَوَّأُوا. Yeah.
وَالَّذِينَ تَبَوَّأُوا وَالدَّارَ وَالْإِيمَانَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ. وَالْإِيمَانَ, wow will be the wow of Maya.
Yeah.
And the Iman will be the Ma'ahu.
Yeah, so tabawwa'u means to settle in, right? So those who settled in the homes, wal imana. Now, if we look at this, right, let's just look at the sentence. Would that make sense if this was a atif who settled in homes and faith?
No.
It wouldn't make sense, right? So this is one where it's actually, even the meaning is more clear, right? The context of the meaning is more clear. That they settled in home with faith, right? Faith they had min qablihim, right? From before, right? And so this actually, some of these are going to be a little bit more clear because the meaning of the sentence won't make sense otherwise, right? And so this is a good example of that. Okay, let's go to the next one. We have Muhaymina. Could you give us number 5?
Yes, this is going to be a wow of conjunction, ma'al fatah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah. Good. Why?
ma'iyya or
And what's the reason?
because fadhhab go to it's and your Lord.
Right. It is and your Lord, but what's the reason even grammatically?
But
How would we know?
We also talked about it coming the verb preceding it.
Right. Well, the most obvious clue would be the dhamma on the ba, right? Warabbuka, it's in the rafa case, right? If this was
Right.
even
Oh,
close
it has
to
to be in
being
a nasb
ma'iyya,
case. It has
exactly.
it has been nasb case, yeah.
Exactly right. So that would be a reason why it's not that. Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, great. Okay, so let's see. We have a few more activities. I think we can finish these before we go into our break. Now, what we want to do is we want to identify, is this atif, is it qasam, or is it ma'iyya? I think we're at Omar. Could you tell us what's happening with number 1? وَالنَّجْمِ إِذَا هَوَى.
That would be the qasam.
Okay, why is it qasam?
In the state of jar, and then you can from the meaning, I guess.
Nice. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. All right. Let's see. Number 2, I think we're back at Abdul Ahad.
وَالنَّجْمُ وَالشَّجَرُ يَسْجُدَانِ. This is while al-ataf.
Nice. Yes, thank you. Right, in process of elimination, it can't be qasam or ma'iyya because they all have different endings. Okay, nice. Aisha Morgan, number 3.
This is al-ma'iyya because the wa shuraka is nasib.
Okay. Good. Now, good. That's one reason. The other reason would be the meaning. The ajmi'u is to like come together or to work out. Amrakum, work out what? Your affair. Your all affair, right? The affair of you all. Or in English, we just make it singular. The affair, your affair. Wa shuraka'akum. It wouldn't be work out your affair and your partners. It would be with your partners, right? With your partners. Shuraka are going to be partners, right? So even the meaning would convey that as well. Awesome. Okay, next one we have, I think we're at Asma, number 4.
Wallahu alimun bizzalimin. So I know it's not our Maf'ūl Ma'ahu. And also it's not wallahi, so it's not in qasam, so that's why it's an ataf.
Right, awesome, excellent. Yeah, thank you so much. And the last one we have is Aziza.
Yeah. Qalu wallahi, because wallahi, so it will be qasam.
Excellent,
Jar.
Awesome. Yeah, great. Thank you so much. All right, so we're at our morphology lesson. We're going to go ahead and pause here. We'll take a 5-minute break, and inshallah, we'll come back to jump into the morphology. So I'll see you all in about 5 minutes, inshallah. All right, so inshallah, everyone is back. Let's see. You can see my screen where we are covering. Today we will be covering Form 5, inshallah. So what I'd like to start off with is if anyone would like to do a brief elevator pitch from our list. I think we had Asma go earlier, which is great. Anyone else that would like to volunteer, just give us a brief elevator pitch of the different meanings of Form 5.
So I can go.
Awesome, thank you.
The verb tafa'ala, which is Form 5, has 4 main meanings. One of which is reflective. Second is graduality. Third is seeking, and fourth is abundance. In reflective, one example is example tadakkur, which Form 1 is dhakara, which is remember, but when we add it to this form is to reflectively remember or recall.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure yes, as we go further, we'll see other examples of the other of seeking and avoidance and graduality.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you very much. All right, yes. So we have, I think last in level 2, we covered one of the meanings for Form 5, which was reflexivity, which is often it's usually the main meaning. And we just want to cover that reflexivity means that the verb occurs and it's happening to the doer. It's reflexive, as in like if I were to say something, so if I were to say I learned, right? If I were to say to learn, ta'allama zaydun, right? Which is also on Form 5. But it means Zayd learned, as in Zayd is the doer of learning, but it's also something that's happening to him, right? Something that's happening to him. Ta'allama. So tafarraqa similarly is that they separate. So tafarraqa an-nasu is the people separated. The action of separation is happening to the people, which is the doer, right? So reflexivity is kind of where the doer is also in a sense receiving that action. Zayd is learning, or Zayd learns. Zayd is doing the learning, but it's also the learning is happening to him. Tafarraqa means to separate. The people are doing the separation, but it's also happening to them. They're separating as a group, right? So that's kind of what we mean when we say reflexivity. It's what we call mutawa'a, and in Form 5, it appears in a certain context, and we'll talk about that with more detail. Then we have graduality, which is something happens with time. Similarly, we have the meaning of ta'allama, but ta'allama also means something happens slowly over time. As in, when I say ta'allama, learning doesn't happen in an instant, right? And unfortunately, we think it does because the way the modern world works is everything is instantaneous, but learning takes time, right? It's like step by step. You're going through those steps, right? So that's what we're seeing also with Form 5. And it's interesting because it has an interesting relationship to Form 2, right? It kind of drags out Form 2 with that ta a little bit. Okay, then we have seeking. And so tabayyana actually means to seek clarity. So we have the ta also there it kind of is seeking something out, right? And the last one we have is avoidance, which is not as common, but tajahada, for example, is like to avoid, right? It's to avoid here. It's actually to avoid sleep, right? Juhud is actually sleep. So tahajjud, which is the masdar of tahajjada, excuse me, I said tajahada and I was thinking of another word, but it's tahajjada, which makes more sense. Tahajjud is the time where you avoid sleep. So it's the midnight prayer, right? It's when you pray late into the night. So we're going to see more of that as we go through these in more detail. So as we said, reflexivity is, we also can call it compliance. It's, I guess you could say that the doer is complying to the action, as in it's applying to themselves. And it's usually for Form 5, it's usually coming from a Form 2 verb. So if you take the form 2 verb, it's the subject or the doer that is participating or complying to the action that was originally in form 2. So ma yufarriquna, farraqa yufarriqu means to cause separation, right? To cause separation is someone separates someone else, but tafarraqa means to separate, right? So the separation is taking place, right? It's not being caused, it's happening, right? So it's who it's happening to. Okay, so that's what we have.
Question.
Yes.
I have a question. Like, but in this tafa'ala, does the one word can have a two meaning or only one?
It can. Sometimes it can take more than one meaning. So you're talking about ta'allama?
Yes.
Yeah, it can take more than one.
Okay.
Yeah, because we don't want to limit the meanings. Like ta'allama, it can definitely take more than one. So ta'allama can also be reflexive, right? Why? Because what's the form 2 of ta'allama? Let's break it down according to what we have. It's allama. Ma ma'na allama? What does allama mean?
To teach?
Exactly. So ta'allama is when the teaching, right, the causing of knowledge, right, to cause knowledge to take place is to teach, right? But when someone takes that causing and applies it to the subject, they apply it themselves, right? You cause yourself to teach. Well, are you teaching yourself, right? Self-learners aren't self-teachers. We don't call them self-teachers. It becomes learning at that point, right? And so it actually would apply even with this specific rule, which is that the subject of the form 2, when it participates, it complies to the action of form 2 for itself, and it's no longer causing it to something outside of itself, it becomes form 5, right? So if a teacher were to cause himself or herself to learn, right, it would cause them to learn, cause himself or herself to learn. Well, now they're learning, they're no longer teaching, right? It goes from allama to ta'allama. Even in English, right? We don't call self-learners self-teachers, right? That doesn't make sense. The concept is a little strange, right? But a self-learner.
So it becomes to be taught kind of thing.
Yeah, self-taught.
Yeah, it's self-taught, but that's passive, right? Self-taught. Yeah, but that's still containing, I think that's still containing a lot of the meanings that we have, right? Even here, ta'allama, yeah, it wouldn't be self-taught here because the verb is being applied to, right? But self-taught also means you're learning, right? Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
To be taught would not be like, I mean, to be taught wouldn't be like self-taught.
Right, to be taught is not self-taught, right?
I notice what's unique too about the word al-mutawa'a, which might can help us, is it seems like it comes from the word ta'a, to be compliant or to obey in a sense.
Right, it takes the meaning of compliance is a probably closer translation.
Okay. Yeah,
so Mohammed, I think what you're trying to get at is, can you explain what you're trying to get at?
It's just like it's not being passive, but as you're saying, learning on your own, like to be taught kind of thing. The best way to translate it, kind of, ta'allama.
Right. It is. That's how it would work, right? It's not passive, right? And we don't usually translate it as to be taught. We translate it as to learn, because to be taught is it's passive even in English, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so ullima. So the passive is ullima. Ullima would be to be taught, right? U'iya, right? So allama is to teach. Ullima would be to be taught. But what we would say, instead of ullima, we could just say ta'allama, right?
Right. To learn.
Yeah. Okay. Right, because to be taught and to be learned are also similar, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, what we're trying to get at is allama can still apply to this meaning of reflexivity. Why? Because the person that, if a person were to comply, if a teacher or if someone who teaches, they don't have to be teachers necessarily, but if someone who is teaching were then to apply the action of the form 2, which is to teach, to themselves, it then means something different, which is that they're now learning. That's what we're getting at.
So reflexivity is like oneself, like we are doing ourselves.
Exactly. You're applying that thing to yourself.
Thank you.
That verb can apply to oneself. Yeah. Okay. So it's that the action of that verb happens to the object, not the object, the action of the verb occurs to the doer. As in the doer is doing the action, but it's something that they're doing to themselves. So what would that mean? That's like different from dhahaba, because it's going. We don't go to ourselves. That doesn't make sense, right? But to separate, we ourselves, we separate. We're getting into like the specific meanings of words, right? And what is implied when we say one word as opposed to another, right? So this is kind of getting a little bit more to the subtlety of meaning itself, right? And so that's kind of why maybe it feels a little what's the word? It almost feels like it can escape you really quickly. But what we want to hold on to is the fact that once the doer can apply the action to itself, it becomes reflexive because the doer itself is complying, right? And here we're saying subject, but we mean doer here, right? Okay, so then we have tadarruj, which is graduality, right? Tadarraja, interesting. Even the word tadarruj is on the form 5, which is gradual. Something happens slowly over time. So we have alima as well. Now here, it's not coming from the form 2, it's coming from the form 1, right? Which is interesting. But we have alima happening. Like to know something gradually is ta'allama. Yeah, that's a question of like, can the form 5 come from the form 2 and the form 1? That's probably a good question. I'll have to look into that for people that are asking. But I think the form 2 can relate to the form 5 in this way. Because I've seen form 5 being used, ta'allama being used as reflexive. That's something that is definitely there. Okay, but once we then say something is taking a place over time, it's happening repeatedly. That's another reason for form. That's another explanation of what form 5 could mean. It's another meaning. We have يَعْلَمُ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. He knows what is within the heaven and the earth. What يَتَعَلَّمُونَ مَا يَضُرُّهُمْ وَلَا يَنْفَعُهُم. The people learn, right? They learn what harms them and what doesn't benefit him. It's just saying that happens gradually. It's generally just the meaning that to know something is just to have knowledge of something. You know it. It's there. It's already there. But to learn is that thing is coming over time. So knowledge usually means it's already been absorbed. It's there, right? That's why scholars possess knowledge, right? They're not necessarily still learning, right? So it's still taking time, right? So the learning happens with time. And as we learn, we gain ilm, but we're still in this process, right? And the shadda kind of nice here.
They've given it a good example of takallama, that you don't utter all your words in one go.
Right,
so
right.
They come out gradually from your mouth.
Right. Yeah. 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 That's true. Does everyone see that? It's actually on page 102. I don't think we have a reference to it here. If you go to page 102 of your binder, it actually mentions that takallama.
Is it takallama? Is it takalluma? They put it down as takalluma.
So what does that look like? Is it takalluma? What is that, an ism or a fi'l there?
It is it's a fear.
Are you sure?
I'm confused.
Well, it has al, right? So
Oh,
at-takallum.
yes. At-takallum. Oh, it's the language.
Right? It's speech, right? It's speaking. It's an ism because it has al, but it's the masdar. Fa'ala, tafa'ala, yatafa'alu, tafa'ul, right? Right. So that still applies though to the verb, right? Because the masdar is not far from the verb, right? Okay. Yeah, it's also interesting. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and go to the next couple of meanings. We have 2 more. The next one is to seek talab, right? It's seeking something out. We're seeking out some type of a result. So we go from bayyana, where something is clear, to tabayyana, where you're seeking clarity, right? In ja'akum fasiqun binaba'in fatabayyanu. So here the context is actually really interesting. If there comes to you a transgressor, someone who's fasiq, with information, seek clarity about it, because you can't just trust what that person's saying. So saying fatabayyanu, right? And then you have bayyannahu lin-nasi fil kitab. We made it clear, right? So you have this difference. So the context here is also telling about the meaning of seeking here. Okay. The last one we have is tajannaba, which is also funny. It's form 5, right? Which form 5 for tajannaba, tajannab literally is avoidance. It's to avoid something. Yeah. Okay, so we have, it means to avoid from the form 1. To avoid from the form 1. Okay, it's actually interesting because jamb, the root letters of this, jamb actually means to be next to. So tajannaba is to avoid being next to something, in a sense, right? It's to avoid being near it, which literally means to avoid, right? Okay, we have tahajjada, right? And like we said, hujud means sleep. Tahajjada means to avoid sleep. We have other words as well that we'll find, like ta'athama, to avoid sin. Ta'athama means to avoid sin. We have also tajannatha, which also means it also means to avoid sin. But here's another one. Tajannasa. This one's probably easiest. Tajannasa. Should be tanajjasa. To avoid najas. Tanajjasa. Tanajjasa. So this is to avoid sin. Ithim, right? To avoid ithim. Or sin. Then you have tanajjasa, which is to avoid najas, right? Which is filth, right?
So what are the root letters for tahajjada?
What do you think they are?
Hajada.
Yeah, that's right.
So why do they say, I mean, in here bracket it says hujudun is avoid sleep. So what is hajada?
Okay, so those are the root letters, right? Hujud has the root letters, ha, jim, dal. It's just a noun. Hujud.
So is it with the dhamma, the hujudu? Like I always think of it like in with fattas, like hajada. Is that
so hajada by itself is it's a verb. It's a madi verb, right? But hujud is a noun, which means sleep. Does that
so
make
what
sense?
does it does, yes, but then does hajada means sleep or avoid sleep?
Yeah. So hajada, let's see. Hajada hujud, form 5.
Why did they have it as the night pray?
What tahajjud
Layl
means?
is night. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because Layl is night.
Okay.
But then, so tahajjud, if it's avoid sleep, it also comes down as praying. The 1 rakah of tahajjud or nafila, which I mean the 1 rakah of Salatul Layl.
So what it's asking is, this becomes a technical term for us in the religion. Tahajjud takes on a technical term because it means to avoid sleep, but what is the reason why we would be avoiding sleep? It's for the purpose of prayer, right? So we call it tahajjud, it's the night prayer, it's like the late night prayer. But the like the what do you call it? Excuse me. The linguistic origins of that is avoiding sleep. Does that make sense? So the linguistic origins of tahajjud, which is that late night prayer, right, where you wake up in the middle of the night, the linguistic origin of that is avoiding sleep. There's association between that prayer and the linguistic origin, which is that we sacrifice our sleep for it. Is that making sense? So oftentimes, like we have words that have linguistic meanings, but then you can take the linguistic meaning and they take technical meanings as well, right? And so here we're seeing how that technical meaning can come about using the form 5, right? Well, the form 5 is that it means avoiding sleep, but that also we call that tahajjud, right? And tahajjud means we see it as, oh, prayer. It's a late night. It's a specific prayer. It's a late night prayer that you do in the last third of the night, right? But what is the impetus of that? That you sacrifice sleep for it, right? Is that making sense?
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, and that's a good question that you have. Muhaymana, you have the question about hujud. Hujud, the interesting thing is form, at least according to Hans Vera, I have to check other dictionaries. Tahajjud, the root letters of hajada doesn't have, I don't see a form 1 meaning. So it's a question as to what is the form 1 meaning. So hujud here is not sleep. It actually already means avoiding sleep. That is the meaning of hujud here. So some words will have root letters, but they might not have a meaning for those root letters. That happens. Excuse me. It's not that they don't have a meaning for the root letters, it's that they might not have a form 1. So here we have a situation where it doesn't have a form 1. And that's not common. Yeah.
I'm noticing dictionary that you shared with us, Imani.
Yeah.
It's saying, it doesn't say avoid sleep, it's saying sleep. So far I'm seeing, but I don't see anything about avoiding sleep.
Is that in the Arabic?
Yes.
Let's
It's
see.
saying, example, a nom bilayl.
Are you looking up hujud or a tahajjud?
Hujud. I started to search for hujud.
Yeah.
It says, example, in Murjam Mugni, and Naam bilayl.
Yeah.
But as far as not sleeping, I don't see anything. I could be wrong. So I'm not sure translation.
So yeah, if you keep going, you have hajid, which is the person who is Zahid bil-layl musalliyan qa'im al-layl, right? Standing in the night. If you say, look up hajud, so here, maybe this is a typo. I have to ask about this because you have hajud and hajud musallin laylan. Jama' hujud, right? So this is a challenge when you get into the dictionaries, right? Hajada, if you look hajada na'imun laylan, but we also have hajada salla laylan. Both of those are there, which is really interesting.
I wasn't sure if it helped. I'm just trying to help. If avoidance, if it's there or not there.
والجمع حجد وهجود هو هجود أيضا. صلى بالليل فهو هاجد. Yeah, so hajada, hujudan, nama, hajada. So both those meanings are actually present. Hajada, thank you for looking up ma'ani because that's really helpful. So there is a form 1. There is a form 1 and it has 2 meanings. The first can mean na'im. It can mean sleeping. It can mean someone sleeping. That's one of the meanings. The other meaning is someone who is literally praying in the night. So both those meanings are there. Salla bil-layl. That's what it says in the dictionary here. This is Mu'jam al-Wasit, which is it's a pretty standard dictionary. So same thing. Hajada ar-rajulu nama bil-layl, hajada as-sahiru sahira. Yeah, that means he woke up. So both of those meanings are actually there. Yeah. So what are we getting at? We're getting at the complexity of Arabic. And the technicality that the same root letters that mean sleep also mean to pray in the night. But that's what we're trying to draw out is that, look, it means sleep, but it can also mean this, right? But tahajjud here, tahajjada or tahajjud takes on the latter meaning, which is praying in the night, right? And that becomes the main meaning that we have. And there could be a question of like, okay, well, what's the original meaning? Is the origin of hajjada nama or salla? That's a question. Maybe it's more accurately nama. I'm inclined to say that because I would safely assume, and that's something I would have to double check, is before Islam came, right? We still had Arabic. I don't know if tahajjud was a norm for the pre-Islamic Arabs, right? That's the question we have to ask. So if tahajjud comes with Islam, then that's a new meaning that's being derived, right? It's a new meaning that's being derived. Okay. So that's kind of what's happening here. Okay, so when we're looking at root letters, there's a lot that's actually happening with them. Okay. Do we have more questions on this? Well, we want to make sure that we do get from this, which is the simple aspect of it, which is that form 5 can mean avoiding something. So here, tahajjada means to avoid sleep. And it's taking on that meaning. It's assuming that the form 1 means nama. That's what it would mean, is to avoid nama, which is sleeping. Because if it had the meaning of avoidance, it wouldn't be to avoid that prayer. Rather, the prayer in the night it implies that we're avoiding sleep, because you can't sleep and be in prayer at the same time, right? Is that making sense to us a little bit? Any more questions on this?
Hans Vera doesn't even include anything for Hajjada except Form 5.
I know. That's why when we first started talking about it, it was based off of what was in Hans Vera. So thank you, Abdul Ahad, for going into Ma'ani. It's great. Is this making sense to us? So, how do we explain this? The language is, there are a lot of parts to it, right? We want to start using some of those resources. I think I shared Ma'ani with the whole group. So jump into the dictionaries. Go ahead and jump into the other resources, and let's start working with them and start playing with what's happening in the language, because there's a lot that's in the dictionary that could give us guidance on where we could go and how we go about some of it. But any more questions? The main thing we want to hold on to is that we have these 4 meanings of Form 5. Okay, awesome. Let's see. Okay, so if we don't have any more questions, let's go ahead and we'll move on into our activities, and then we can jump into our text analysis, inshallah. Prior to that, we just want to go ahead and make sure we talk about the phonetic changes. So we're going to notice that in the Quran, there are 2 types of phonetic changes that can occur for Form 5. And we want to make sure we can identify those so that when we come across them, we don't think it's another form, but we see that it's Form 5, so we don't confuse it. The first change is that the ta in the beginning of Form 5, the tafa'ala, gets dropped. So we usually have tafa'ala, right? And that gets dropped. Tafa'ala gets dropped. So this ta here, we don't have it anymore, but it's still there. It's just been phonetically dropped. And that's usually because that's how it was conveyed. It still means Form 5. Okay. So for certain, this happens also for certain pronouns. It doesn't happen with all the other ones. Specifically for Form 2 pronouns. Okay. Sorry, not Form 2, for second person pronouns. And with basically any verb conjugation in the mudari', this is for the mudari' in particular, right? Any verb conjugations in the mudari' that start with ta, well, let's see, is that the case for all of them? Yeah, second person all start with ta. Yeah, let's start with ta. So for example, that's going to be all of the ant family. We have anta, anti, antuma, right? Antuma, antum, and antunna. All these that start with ta, it gets dropped. Antum, and then you also have antunna. And then we also have hiya, because hiya is also tadhab, right? Because hiya and anta have the same verbal conjugation for the mudari'. So their mudari' verb, any mudari' verb that starts with a ta is going to drop that first. It's going to drop the ta. One of the tas will be dropped. So if we look at the example, أَفَلَا تَذَكَّرُونَ, then will you not remember? This is mudari'. Why? Because we have our noon here and we have this ta, right? Because we have the ta, what kind of pronoun would this be conjugated for? Can someone share it in the group chat or just unmute their mic quickly?
Is antum?
Yeah, it's antum. Antum, technically, what would the conjugation be, Aziza? It would be antum what? This would normally be antum.
Yeah.
What's the conjugation? How would it sound normally?
It's
How do I say?
supposed to be tatazakkarun.
Thank you. Yeah, antum tatadhakkarun. That's what it would normally be. Antum tatadhakkarun, right? So, afala tatadhakkarun, we could say afala tatadhakkarun, but it gets repetitive. Try to say that quickly. Afala tatadhakkarun. The double tas kind of drag out. And so what it does is it just gets rid of the ta that's for the Form 5. Just for this, in this situation, so that it can make it easier for pronunciation. Generally, that's what happens, right? So we get rid of one of the tas and we say tadhakkarun. And so that's what happens. Okay, so it happens with anta, anti, antuma, antum, and antunna, and then hiya. The next change that can also take place is when we have the ta that's at the beginning of the form 5 can assimilate into the first root letter, and then it adds a shadda. And so this can also happen. This would usually happen, I think, if there isn't a ta that's in the beginning. So here, let's have someone else. Can someone else tell me what kind of pronoun is yadhakkarun? What do you think that's being conjugated for?
It's also antum.
Are you sure? It starts with a ya.
Oh, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah. So
Oh,
wala hum,
so
right?
So it is hum. Yeah.
Yeah,
Still
it's
would
hum.
need,
What would the conjugation originally be?
Yatadhakkarun.
Yeah, there we go. Yatadhakkarun, right? Good. Awesome. So it would be yatadhakkarun. But here what they did is they took the ta and they combined it with the dal, and so they put a shadda on the dal. Yadhakkarun. That's what they did. They just literally assimilated it with the dal. And that's more likely going to happen to those letters that don't have a ta in the beginning. But you kind of have to see at the example. But you'll see one of these two things happening, specifically with the form 5, and it's usually with the mudari, because the mudari has that extra ya or ta or whatever it might be, alif, ya, nun, or ta at the beginning of the verb conjugation. And so the ya, it happens often with the ya and the ta because there's a repetition that takes place. Does that make sense to us? Any questions on this? Okay. Awesome. All right. So for the sake of time, we're going to go ahead and we have to unfortunately skip over our sarf practice because we just want to make sure we have time to do our text analysis. I really want to emphasize though that you really want to make sure you're going through these motions for the verb conjugations at home. Take that time. You could spend, maybe just half an hour minimum a week just going through conjugations, because it would help us kind of see and understand what's going on, right? Not just what's going on, but you want to create the habit of remembering the verb conjugations. You want to make sure we can remember the verb conjugations, but even more so identify them as an ism fa'al, an ism maf'ul, a mudari ma'loom, right? If it's a fi'al ma'loom versus a fi'al majhul, right? The active versus the passive verb. We really want to make sure that we are able to identify those and recognize them. So before we go into our text analysis, I just want to really emphasize the importance of practicing our verb conjugations and reinforcing them at home, inshallah. Okay, so here we are at our text analysis. Inshallah, we should be able to finish in time. If we go over in maybe 5 minutes max, inshallah. But let's go ahead and jump in so that we can get started. Okay, so we have Hudun ar-Rasula. All right, so let's see, where do you want to start? We'll go ahead and start. I think we ended at Aziz the last time, so we'll start with Muhaymana. If you'd like to get started.
وأراد الله أن يرسل إلى عاد رسولا. Allah Allah intended that He sends to people of Ad a messenger.
Okay, great. Okay, let's start breaking down the grammar.
Okay.
What kind of word is arada?
It's a verb. It's
okay, what
intention.
form?
Form 4.
Awesome, excellent. What's happening with Allah?
Allah is it's the doer.
Awesome, good. What's happening with an?
He sends down. No, that yours.
What kind of word is yursila?
Yursila is a verb as well, but
okay,
a present
what kind of
form.
verb?
Present
Awesome.
present tense.
Good. And why does it end with a fatha? Present tense usually doesn't end in a fatha. Why is it doing that?
Present tense. Is it because of the an?
Yeah, excellent. The an is a harf nasib. It's causing the mudari to be mansub. Awesome. Okay, what's the construct of ila adin?
Ila is it's a what do you call is a preposition?
Yeah, good. It's a prepositional phrase. What do we call that in Arabic?
Yeah. Jar majrur.
Excellent. Good. This whole thing's a jar majrur. Ila is a harf jar.
Yes,
Adin
and
is
that's
awesome.
yeah, majrur.
What's rasulan grammatically?
Rasulan, it's a noun.
Yes, good. Why does it have a fatha there? Why is it in the nasab case? Which of our four, we've learned four maf'ulat, four objects. Is it a maf'ul bihi, maf'ul li ajlihi, a maf'ul fihi, or a maf'ul ma'ahu?
I think it's a maf'ul li ajlihi, I think.
Okay, what does a maf'ul li ajlihi indicate?
Oh my God.
It indicates motive. It answers the question why. But what is a rasul?
Oh, it's object.
Yeah, it's an object, right?
Yes.
So it's a direct object, which is a
maf'ul bihi.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, we're still gonna the maf'ul bihi is still gonna be like the most common object that we're gonna see. It's usually the most common one. But yeah, excellent. Thank you so much. All right, let's go ahead and go to Omar. If you could give us the next sentence, please.
إن الله لا يرضى لعباده الكفر. So inna Allah would be the ism inna.
Awesome.
And la yarda, that would be the phrase for the khabar inna.
Yeah, what is it a phrase or is it a sentence?
Oh, it'd be a sentence.
Yeah, what kind of sentence?
So it'd be a jumla fi'liya.
Yeah, awesome.
لعباده would be in a harf jar and ism majroor.
Good. What else is it?
It's also in idafa.
Awesome. Yeah, excellent.
And then al-kufr would be the maf'ul bihi.
Awesome. Good. And then what kind of verb is yarda?
Rada yardi, that is a fi'l mudari.
Good. What form is it?
I think it's form 1.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Good. Excellent. How would you translate this?
Allah is not pleased with the worship of kufr.
Close. Close. لِعِبَادِهِ. What is an ibad?
Oh, with the slaves?
Yeah, his servants.
His servants.
Yeah.
His slaves or servants that are committing kufr? Would that be what we'd say?
Yeah. Yeah. He's not, so if we go literally, he is not, so what the maf'ul bihi is kufr. He is not pleased with kufr for who?
For his slaves?
Yeah, for his servants. Yeah. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Yeah, for his servants, right? Awesome. Okay, let's see. Next, we have Abdul Ahad. Could you give us the next sentence, please?
إن الله لا يحب الفساد في الأرض. حرف إن.
Technically, we call it harf nasab. Inna harf nasab.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. إن حرف نصب.
Yeah.
الله لا تجعل اسم إن.
Awesome.
لا يحب الفساد جملة فعلية في محل in taking the خبر state.
Good. في محل.
يحب.
What do we call
محل
it?
رفع.
رفع. Nice. خبر إن.
إن.
Right? Nice. Yeah. Nice. You're getting that wrong. That's great.
في حرف جر والأرض مجرور.
اسم مجرور.
اسم مجرور.
Yeah. And then what's fasad?
فساد مفعول به.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, how would you translate this? Oh, hold on. One more question. What kind of verb is yuhibbu?
Form 1.
Are you sure? Does form 1 start with a dhamma?
Oh, form 4.
Yeah, it's actually coming from ahabba.
right? Ahabba yuhibbu.
Oh.
It's irregular, right? Because
Right.
it has the shadda of the ba, right? Technically, it was originally ahbaba.
Oh.
But what happens is we have the double ba, and it's like super repetitive. As you can see, the Arabs don't like a lot of repetition. So what do they do when they have repetition? Either they'll drop it or they'll turn it into a shadda, right? But the shadda is nice because it tells you, oh, something else is going on here. So you go from ahbaba to ahabba, right? And technically, I think you could use this, but it's not common. Like it's very technically, like it's how the verb originally was, but we turn it into ahbaba.
Okay.
Or sorry, we go from ahbaba to ahabba, and so it's form 4. And you're gonna learn more about the irregular letters in level 4, inshallah. So wait till you get there. But right now we can still identify them. Like yarda. Yarda is also irregular. Can someone tell me why it would be irregular? Take a guess.
Is it the alif maksura?
Exactly. It looks weird, right? There's no dhamma. We can't see la. It's not yardayu. But if it was, what would that be? Yardayu. You get that sound ew. You get the oo sound. They don't like that sound either. So it's an alif maqsura, and they have to get rid of the alif maqsura. Actually hides the ending. It does what I believe we call ta'adhur. It hides the ending, and it's a weak letter. It indicates a waw or a ya, which is a weak letter. So a general rule is that if a verb has a waw or a ya or an alif, the alif though is usually signifying a waw or a ya in the roots. If it has one of these in the verb, in the root letters of the verbs, it's irregular. Why? Because it's weak. Some aspect of the verb is weak. Yarda, its makeup is weaker than yursil, right? It's weak. Why? Because of that alif maqsuda, which represents either a waw or a ya in the root letters, right? So, but yuhibbu, ahabba yuhibbu, what are our root letters? What would they be, Abdul Ahad?
Hab, ha, ba, ba.
Yeah, hub comes from this, right? Hab comes from this, right? Awesome.
Yes.
In the dictionary, in Hanswehr at least, we look up ha and ba by itself, and we come across ahabba yuhibbu eventually, right? But yeah, here it's irregular, but it's not weak. It doesn't have a weak letter. It has a doubled letter. There's tashdid that's happening. There's a specific term for this. You'll learn it in level 4, inshallah. Okay, awesome. But well, that's one aspect of the Arabic, is being able to recognize the different types of words we have. Awesome. So now go ahead and give us the translation, please.
Indeed, Allah does not love destruction in the or transgression in the earth.
Yeah. Good. Awesome. Yeah. Transgression, corruption, that works. Awesome. Any questions on this before we move on? Alhamdulillah. The aim is that this stuff becomes pretty straightforward for us, so that by the time we get to level 3B and you get into the Surah Al-Shu'ara, you're going to be surprised at how much grammar you can break down. And it'll be great because we'll go into a little bit of eloquence, as Abdul Ahad mentioned earlier. There's an eloquent aspect of the Quran that in order to understand, you have to know the foundations of grammar and morphology, which is why we're so heavily focusing on that right now. You guys will be excited to go to levels 5 and 6, inshallah. Okay, next we have Abdul Ahad. Let's go ahead and jump to Ayesha Morgan. So this is, well, hold on. This is a challenging one. So what I'm going to do is I will go ahead and break this one down for us right now because it's challenging, because it has two things that we're going to learn later, which is anything that has la and illa. The main thing is illa. It's an exception, which we're going to see later on. But this is a jumla with kana, and we have an ism kana, which is aad. But the khabar kana is this jumla that has all of this stuff with illa. Okay. La yasta. So aad, what about aad? They didn't use their intellects, right? So yasta'miluna, if we look at it, is going to be a fi'il mudari'. Its doer is the waw, right? It's going back to Aad, the people of Aad. They didn't use, right, mudari' verb. This is form, what, 10, right? It's form 10. Uqulahum maf'ūl bihi and idafa, right? Their intellects, the intellects of theirs. Let's see, we have idafa. Illa fi, except in a number of things. What were those things? Jar majrur constructs. Here we go. Fil akli wal shurbi wal lahwi wal la'abi wa bina'il buyuti. Bina'il buyuti is also an idafa, right? Now the question is, what kind of wow do we have? So Ayesha, what kind of wow are you seeing?
I'm here. This is atif of conjunction.
Exactly. How do we know?
Because it's doesn't have a fetha for nasib,
Right.
and by context,
Right. It's matching the ending
things.
of akli, right? So technically these aren't all ism majud. The only ism majud is akli. Everything else is atif ala al-akl, right? Everything else is atif ala al-akl. So when we translate this, we're saying, and Ad, as in the people of Ad, they didn't use their intellects except when it came to eating and drinking and being frivolous and playing and building houses. That's all they thought about. That's all they applied themselves to, right? Okay, now Ayesha, I will give you this next sentence. Sorry to take the thunder.
In that case, those are commas. Those wows turn into commas.
They act like them, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could say that, yeah.
Okay, so our next, we're gonna start with bina'i.
وقد فسدت.
وقد. Okay. وقد فسدت أكلهم. And so in this case, the wa is also, I'm going to say it's also conjunction. It's because contextually it doesn't mean with.
Right, good.
It's not an oath.
Right.
And so qad is the emphasis for fasadat, and that is a fel mudara.
Are you sure it's mudari?
No, madi.
Nice.
I don't know why I don't remember the words, right?
Okay.
But it is singular feminine, and the reason it's singular feminine is because the fa'il, ukuluhum, their minds, I guess it's a what do we say, a broken plural, so it's
right.
non-human.
Yeah.
So it's taking the feminine singular.
Right. Awesome. Okay.
The ukulahum is an idafa.
Good. What else is it?
Sorry?
What else is it?
It is the maf'ūl
it's the dhamma, right?
Yeah, it's the dhamma, so it's the fa'il.
Yeah, awesome. Excellent. How would you translate this?
And so certainly their minds had degenerated or degraded.
Yeah, or more literally become corrupted, right? But yeah, that's a different, that works too.
Had corrupted?
Yeah, because fasada means to corrupt something, but degeneration is a type of corruption, right?
But then it would be really nice if it were passive and it had been corrupted.
Yeah, but they were corrupted. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Qad. Yeah. Yeah.
In which case it would
be
yeah.
Even in the translation we said had, their intellects had degenerated. This works fine in the Arabic. I think it's just the English translation that would put it into the
So if it were passive, it would be fu.
Yeah, because it's madi.
Fu si dat.
Yeah.
But it's not.
Yeah. I think because fasada means let me look it up. It either means to corrupt or to be corrupt. Yeah, the form 1 means to be corrupt, to become vicious, to become corrupted, to become decayed, become spoiled, to be or become. Yeah. So it's embedded in the meaning. It's
Okay,
the meaning
got it.
itself is intransitive, right? So
already
the intransitive were, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, awesome.
In which case,
All right.
no maf'ul bihi.
Exactly. Right. Okay, next we have Asma. Could you give us the next sentence, please?
لأنهم لا يستعملون في
Mm-hmm.
في الدين.
Yeah, good. Fiddin, right? This is a kasra here, technically. Yeah, technically, there,
Yeah.
even though it's under the shadda and it's on top
Oh,
of the letter.
Fiddini.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, there you go.
Fiddini.
Nice.
So, so Fiddini is in their religion or in their, yeah, Fiddini. Li annahum. So I'm getting a little stuck there. Li is for annahum. Hum is there, and I'm trying to say
Wait,
annahum.
what is Anna? Anna is the sister of what?
Um,
Li Anna actually is a sister, right?
yeah, it's a sister of Inna, right? So
Yeah,
hum
exactly.
is Isam Anna,
Yeah. Ism Li Anna.
and then the rest is Khabar Anna.
Yep, Khabar Li Anna. Good. Okay, good.
And
Now,
I've identified that as form 10, Yastamilun-naha. And also the ha there is an idafa.
Are you sure? Can we have an idafa with a verb?
No, so it's an object.
Good. What kind of object?
A direct object, right? So
yeah, maf'ul bihi, awesome.
So I'm trying to kind of put the meaning together.
Okay.
So it's amala, so their deeds. So
Yeah.
and then la is a negation.
Yeah, istamala means to use.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So
they
la
did not use.
Yeah, what did they not use? What is that ha going back to in the sentence contextually?
Their intellect, right?
Good, yeah, right, because it's being treated as a singular feminine, right? Excellent.
Yeah. So they did not use their intellect for their religion.
Right. So what's the
I mean,
context
it's
of
in their
fiddin?
religion, right? Like,
Yeah,
he
they
is.
did not use their, and you can translate it as for.
Okay.
Yeah, so translation from English to Arabic, especially with particles, can get tricky, but here you could use
Okay.
for. Yeah. Good. Awesome.
Okay.
And then fiddin is also a jar majrur, right?
Yeah, fiddin is jar.
All right, let's go ahead and take Aziza.
Yes. وكان عاد عقلاء في الدنيا أغبياء في الدين. وكان is فعل ناقص وكان and عاد is اسم كان. Then عقلاء is the خبر كان.
Right.
في الدنيا is the jar مجرور.
Awesome.
And that they will have a two khabar, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
then
this makes more sense as a second khabar kana.
Yeah, aghbiya. Then again, fiddin is jar majrur.
Good. How would you translate this?
And where was that? Wakana adun. Wakana adun uklaw. Yeah, they were intelligent in matter of the dunya. This world or dunya. But aghbiya is like a stupid.
Yeah, or you could say unintelligent also works.
Unintelligent? Okay, unintelligent in the religion.
Yeah, good. Yeah, so here we see fi being used as in and then also for. Translation is going to differ depending on how it also works in English. Awesome. Thank you. So I think everyone's gone once. For the sake of time, I'm just going to run through the rest of this so we have a breakdown of it. But we have يَعْبُدُونَ الْحِجَارَةَ وَلَا يَعْقِلُونَ, that they worshipped, right? Why were they unintelligent? Well, they worshipped stones, right? So you have fi'l madari, form 1. The waw was our fa'al. Right. Waw was our fa'al. Even here the waw was a fa'al. الحجارة مفعول به ولا يعقلون also fi'l madari, form 1. And the fa'al is my fa'al. These all go back to the people ba'ad. Right. Awesome. Okay, this last part. فَأَرَادَ اللَّهُ أَنْ يُرْسِلَ إِلَيْهِمْ. So we're seeing a lot of what we already saw. It's being repeated. So you have أَرَادَ, past tense, form 4. The fa'il is Allah. And يُرْسِلَ, again, we see form 4. Mudari though, right? And the N is making it mansub. It's giving it that little fatha. إليهم is a jar majroor. رسولا is our مفعول به. يهديهم is a fi'l mudari'. It's also irregular. Let's look at that. Yeah, oh, weak letter, right? يهديهم, this him, because it's coming with the verb, is a maf'ul bihi, it's a direct object. Pronouns that are attached to verbs are usually they're direct objects. They are direct objects. They're not idafas, right? Because verbs can never be a part of an idafa. So Allah wanted to send to them a prophet who would guide them, right? Well, radallahu, again, we're seeing the same thing. Past tense, form 4. Allah is my fa'il, lafz jalala, right? And yakuna, here we have an again, but we have kana. So kana hada rasulu. Here hada is our ism kana. And this is, the n is making kana yakuna mansub. It's a mudari' mansub. Hada rasula min anfusihim. So hada rasulu here, this is our fa'il. Allah wanted that this messenger, right? So this is what we call badal. It's acting like a sifa wa mawsuf, but it's what we call badal. That's why it imitates the technical role of hada, right? Hada is mabni because it's fixed on the alif, so we can't see the sign for the marfu, for the rafa case. So that's why rasulu, it follows. It's another one of those followers is what we're going to see in level 4. It's called badal. It's following hada and it's in the rafa case. Min anfusihim is our jar majrur construct, and we have an idafa anfusihim, their selves, right? And we would say that that is for themselves, probably more accurate. Idafa and the jar majrur, and this is acting like our khabar kana. Right? So God wanted that this messenger, basically that he be from among them. Okay, يعرفونه ويفهمون كلامه. So these are two mudari' verbs. They're both form 1. And they both have the waw as the fa'il, and they both have maf'ul bihi. The first one, fa'il plus a pronoun, maf'ul bihi. The ha is going back to rasul. ويفهمون كلامه. Kalam is our other maf'ul bihi, and we have an idafa again, right? And it is an idafa, and yeah, and that ha also goes back to rasul. Kana hudan dhalika rasul. So we have a ism jumla kana, ism kana, khabar kana. Rasul is also like a badal for dhalika. It's following that. And Hud was that. He was that prophet or that messenger. Rasula. That's why Rasula, it takes a fatha because the khabar kana is mansub. Wulida, this is a verb, madi. It's form 1 and it's passive, right? Wulida, u'i'a. Fi baytin. So he was born in a house. Sharifin. That's a sifa. In a like a noble house. Fi adin is also jar majrur. Wa nasha'a ala aqlin wa salahin. Okay, and he was like raised on nasha'a. This is also madi form 1. So the fa'ils for these, the na'ib al-fa'il is huwa here for wulida, and nasha, the fa'il is huwa. Ala aqlin, jar majroor. And salah is like upright, being upright. Well, salah is technically atif, right? So the waw is atif for aql. Okay. So he was born in a noble house in Ad, right? Among these people, basically, and he was raised upon intellect and righteousness, basically. All right. Any questions on this before we move on? Inshallah, it's beneficial. I'm going to go ahead now and share the quiz. And you all can take it now if you feel ready. And if you feel like you just need some more time, take that time, but try not to take too long. Of course, quizzes are generally need to be submitted before the next week's class. So let's see. All right, so the quiz is in the group chat, and inshallah, we'll also add it to the WhatsApp group shortly. So jazakallah khair, everyone. It's nice to have everyone back. And I just want to say again, I really appreciate the enthusiasm of the group. It's really nice to see you all working with each other, talking to each other, and some of you taking the time to go into some of these other texts and try to read through the Arabic. It'd be nice. Some of you guys are doing it, and it'd be great if we can start getting others can start moving in a similar direction. And take our time, you take it slow, but inshallah, one of the aims of learning, not just learning Quranic Arabic, is to also eventually access a lot of these texts. And it takes time, but if you have the if you have the time, to ta'allama, right, to gradually, start to expose yourself to reading things in Arabic, and we'll be doing it more and more as we go to levels 4 and 5 and 6. Yeah, we'll do the review tomorrow evening. It'll be 7 p.m. Eastern time, and we will go over lesson 6, inshallah, the text analysis for lesson 6. Yes. Any other questions?
I have a question about, if we go back for a little bit, 109 page.
Yeah.
The form 5 meaning.
Okay.
Because we didn't have a time, so we didn't do this.
Right.
لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَفَكَّرُونَ. And then they say, لِيَتَفَكَّهُ. That is meaning is graduality and seeking. That word.
This is page 108.
This is 109.
Yeah. Okay, we don't have, I don't think it's in the text. Do we have it here?
Form 5 meaning below the
Is it number? Yeah.
Tafarraqa,
Okay.
yatafarraqu.
Do we have that drill here? Let me just double check.
Yeah. Is this 5D?
Yeah. Here it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Which number?
No, before that.
Oh,
it is
okay.
E. It is D.
Okay. I don't know if it's on the, oh, here it is.
Oh, yeah, you have. Yeah.
Is this it?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
The second one, they say graduality and seeking.
Yeah. Yeah. It also could be reflexivity. So this is also an option.
Oh, all three?
Yeah, it could be all three. Because tafaqahu is to understand, right? It's like learning.
Yeah.
So it applies to yourself. Similarly, it takes time. Understanding takes time. And in another respect, you're seeking it out, right?
Yeah.
So as we meant, there was a question earlier of, can you have more than one meaning? And yes, you definitely can, right? We saw that with ta'allama, but here we have it with tafaqqaha, right?
So it can have all three meaning, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that can all happen at once. And it can, because like, think about learning, think about understanding. It's something, understanding it, like seeking understanding, you're seeking it out, but in seeking it out, it's something that takes time, and you're still applying it to yourself, right?
Yes, so, reflexivity also.
Yeah. So it can take on many of these meanings. That's right. Also, another one is in this,
تتفكرون.
Yeah. فَلَمَّا تَبَيَّنَ لَهُ. Yeah, here, we also want to add for number 5, it can also be reflexivity. And the meaning of reflexivity actually makes more sense here. Because the translation says when it became clear. I have to look up the actual verse, but it says when it became clear to him, but it would be when he sought clarity. That would be a better translation. But seeking clarity also.
It is inside.
Yeah. The form 2 is to make clear. Now, if it means to become clear, it wouldn't be seeking, it would be reflexivity, right? Because after making something clear, it becomes clear, it's reflexivity, right? So based off of the translation they have, reflexivity makes more sense, but seeking is the general one we have for tabayyana. So I have to look up this verse.
It was confusing, actually.
Yeah, no, that's understandable. And I actually have these because we talked about it in another class, I think. Let me just double check this one. Yeah, let me just look up the verse. فَلَمَّا this is 259. Yeah, the meaning in the verse, according to the tafsirs, is that it is seeking clarity. So the translation wouldn't make sense here, because it says the text, at least the commentary I'm looking at, says, let's see, فَنَظَرَ إِلَيْهَا فَتَبَيَّنَ لَهُ كَيْفَ يَتِمَّ الْإِحْيَاءُ وَالْبَعْثُ. So it's seeking clarity on how they would come about the resurrection and the day of judgment, essentially, right? Yeah, so let me maybe the translation is off, because that could be the real problem or the real challenge here. So let's see. It's Surah
And we
Baqarah.
don't have the things before or after. So we are like,
Yeah. No, I agree. But we have the verse, so we can search it. So let's see if I can find the verse.
bayan.
Okay, I got to flip through 259. Give me a second. For everyone that's still here, you're welcome to depart if you need to. Let's see.
I just have a quick question about the text analysis tomorrow. I can't attend because of the timings, because we're in London.
Okay.
So I don't know, do you have a recording or something?
Yeah, I can share those. Those can be shared, definitely. Yeah,
Please.
definitely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, 259. Let's see. We have فلما تبين له. Oh, let's see. And when the matter became clear unto him, he said, when all became clear to him, when this was shown. Yeah, here tabayyana, it doesn't have the meaning of seeking, because prior to that, well, فَتَبَيَّنَ له. Oh, wow. Okay. Let's look up tabayyana in Ma'ani. Ma'ani has ads. Let's see. Tabayyana. Yeah, tabayyana can also mean for something to become clear. Tabayyana shay ظهر اتضح. تبين شيء تأمله. تبين شيء أوضحه. Yeah, tabayyana can definitely mean to become clear. تأمل حتى اتضح. That's usually the main meaning. To seek clarity. That might be later. تبينت الحقيقة اتضحت ظهرت تعرفها بوضوح تأملها. Maybe the تأمل is the seeking out. في الأمر تثبت فيه تبين الحقائق اتضح ظهوره. Yeah.
What root word we will say? Bayanun or what?
Yeah, bayanun, yeah. Bayanun is right. Yeah, so I mean, the meaning here would make more sense of being reflexive than to be seeking, even in the translation. Unless you were to say, embedded in something becoming clear is the seeking of it, but that I don't know if that's far-fetched. But yeah, I double checked this with someone and they said yes. I'm pretty sure I double checked with our executive director. So the more appropriate meaning for this form 5 in that verse in Baqarah is reflexivity and not seeking.
Yeah. So if we get the question, what we write? What did
I don't think it's a test question. I don't think so. If it is, let me know and we can work that out. But you should be okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Sorry,
no
problem.
I took
your time.
No, it's no problem. No problem. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair, everyone. So for everyone who's here, alhamdulillah, jazakallah khair. Like I said, we have a small group, but it's a nice group. I like how we're working with each other and seeking help from one another, and it's really nice to have that type of a cohort of students. So keep it up, and if you're not seeking things out, I encourage you to use it as an opportunity to look things up and to get access to some of these other things. There are some more resources I can look up and share with you all that might be fun for you all to kind of use in your free time, inshallah. All right.
Also, one thing too, Ustadha Ayesha, I thought about with form 5 is to the Qadr, where it's described the angels, how they came down. Most times translated as example, looking here, it kind of says they descend, came down. So with Tanazzalu Malaika, I guess it will fall under gradual, that because with the tafsir, they kind of explain they came down one by one.
Yeah, what's the verse?
To the Qadr, verse 4.
Okay.
So the English, you hear all the time, the angels came down.
Yeah.
But of course, with the classes and tafsir, people were saying it was just to clarify how they came down one by one throughout the night. but this form definitely highlights the hidden meaning that it could be gradual, which you can't confirm.
Yeah. Yeah, تنزل الملائكة. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. تنزل الملائكة. It could be gradual. Let me see.
Because most time, in tafsir, or they kind of explain that it's like that night they constantly coming down that night with the decrees.
Right. So it's happening repetitively.
Right.
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, it wouldn't be seeking or avoidance. So that would either be tadarruj or it would be mutala'a, but I'm struggling to see how mutala'a would apply. Let's see. Yeah, here. Did you check out Ma'ani? تنزل نزل في بطء.
Like slow.
عن الحق
gradual.
ترك. Yeah. So if you have تنزل عن, it's ترك, but تنزله جعله ينزل. It's تنزل. Hold on. Yeah.
Which was the Tanzazzal al Malaikatu wa Ruhu? This is the one he was asking.
Yeah.
Here's the meaning say, on the night the angels and the spirit descend again and again with their Lord permission and every task.
Yeah.
So it happened continuous, like again and again.
So the other explanation, and it actually quotes this verse. تنزل, it's mu'jam al-wasit. It says نزل في مهلة, and muhla is like it could be delay, but it could also be at an appointed time or a limited time. Yeah, so it could be that they came down at a specific time, and here it's Surah Al-Qadr, right?
Yes.
So yeah, you can spend a lot of time on this stuff, which is what's fun.
Will you for level 5 or 4?
It's called Al-Ma'ani. So
Al-Ma'ani.
you can look it up. This is to Ayesha's question. You can look it up on it has an app on your phone, and you can also search it up on Google. It has it. Let's see.
Yeah, I put the picture, the link, I think a few weeks back in the group. If you go back, you'll see it.
Yeah.
Because the verse had to muscle the Fajr until the Fajr comes, so it's like seems like it's and we know how the angels kind of
so even mahla is like with leisure, but even in like Hanzer it says that despite their delay, it's a time limit. So muhla can mean it could be slowly. I think maybe that's what we're getting at.
Okay. So we'll be closer to gradually than seeking
I think so.
effectively.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or the orange, like this gradually leading up is.
Yeah, and I'm also wondering, like, if you think about the nature of the graduality, it's like if there are many angels and they're going a few at a time, right? It's still a gradual procession of angels, right?
Right.
It wouldn't, and so there's layers to the graduality that they're gradually coming down, but there's a gradual procession, right? That's a possibility, but I mean,
it kind of fits like not their nature sense, but we know how they, example, beat my more they constantly, example, making tawaf, or like somebody come to make on the Kaaba and don't come back.
Yeah.
Their nature is kind of like they're constantly changing shifts and vice versa.
Right. Yeah. So here's another. Mahal can also mean in terms of action. عمله بالسكينة والرفق ولم يعجل. So you do something without rushing. It's with a type of calmness and peace and like a gentleness. That's what muhal can also have that meaning. To adda ورفق. So do something with the rifq, to do it gently, right? So that's another meaning that's in here.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's another.
kind of goes with Salama. He had to kind of like come down with peace and
Right, which also it goes back to the verse as well, right? Laylatul Qadr is also a time of there's a lot of sakina in that night. Yeah, I see that a lot. مهل في فعله مهل مهلا تناوله برفق, that you do something with, like, you obtain something with gentleness. ولا يعجل, that you don't do it with haste, right? Yeah, same thing. مهل في العمل لم يتعجل, أي يعمل في بطء وتأنٍ. Yeah. So it's like you do it slowly, but with that is also a type of like you do it slowly, but with that type of like gentleness that comes with it. It's just giving you a more vivid image of what's happening. Yeah.
to the word gradually can also imply the word to unfold in a sense, like
yeah. It also
like,
says like so مهلة specifically مشى على مهلته برفق وأعطاه مهلة لينجز عمله, أي أعطاه زمنا قليلا فرصة محددة. So it's also like to give someone a limited time to do something. Which these are in Hansver too. But it sometimes it's more clear in Arabic. Yeah, so that's the other thing, is that Laylatul Qadr also has a restricted time.
right.
So there's also the question of, is it incorporating all of these meanings or just some, right? And all of them are possible, right? So yeah, that's the more sometimes, because the meanings aren't exclusive, right? It's not like you can only have one and not the other. You can have multiple layers of meaning that's there. And so when you have that, what that does is it actually presents a clear image of what's taking place in the verses.
You're right. Visual. Yeah, because like if I just like the time where it's like the end time, the cap time.
Right. Yeah. But those are good questions. That's great. Alhamdulillah. Let's go ahead and pause here. I have another class in half an hour. So I kind of have to go. But this was very nice. I really appreciate everyone's enthusiasm to hang around and have these conversations. It's great. Alhamdulillah. All right. Jazakallah khair, everyone. And I'll see some of you tomorrow and the rest next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.